You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about sports in the state of Michigan?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media, the show that provides research and statistics about all the Detroit and Michigan sports teams, whether fans like it or not, and detects, exposes, and reveals actual and hidden facts and truth that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no slappiness, no coddling, no pop culture, no conspiracy theories, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast.com. Follow us on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like and share our verified Facebook page, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Also listen to us on Spreaker, CastBox, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts via iTunes, and Spotify, and like Stables Media on Facebook. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good because the truth is out there. And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. Taylor Phillips and Ed Smith and Frank Vazner are here with you guys. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vazner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vazner. My opening statement, the Lions have finally decided to put an end to their most important era, and they have pretty much fulfilled their front office and coaching staff. Ed, what is your opening statement?
My opening statement is that it is a moment that probably should have happened much sooner than later than now, but I'm glad it's finally happening. I'm glad for Matthew Stafford. I'm glad for the Lions they'll finally move on for each other.
Awesome. Frank?
My opening statement relates to the new faces in the Lions organization, and not just their head coach, Dan Campbell, but new faces in their front office as well. People who are actually well respected around the league, like Ray Agnew, who was an assistant with the LA Rams, and also bringing in John Dorsey, who has a good track record of being a solid drafter. And even coaches they brought in like Deuce Staley and John Phipp, guys who are well respected at their positions as well and come from winning organizations.
I thought it was Dave Phipp.
Oh, Dave Phipp, excuse me. I had him mixed up with somebody, my apologies. But yes, those gentlemen that they're bringing in and come in with proven track records in other places, and maybe, just maybe, the Lions will finally get to being a competent winning organization.
Oh yeah, can't wait. Before we get started, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports mobile app, VigIt. Enter the referral code STABLES for Stables Media when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the VigIt app and sign up with the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the letter B in the middle, lowercase. Michigan users can pre-register with its partner BetMGM and make a minimum deposit of $10 in exchange for 2,000 VIG coins. Take advantage of this opportunity, Michiganders. Now, some local sports media news before we delve into the Lions here. Fox Sports Detroit will change its name to Bally Sports Detroit at some point before the MLB season begins. Frank, you pointed this out earlier today, but we're going to go to Ed Smith and let him share his thoughts on the name change of that network. Ed, go ahead.
My thoughts are, really, I think this is a brand change that I expect to see coming ever since it was announced that this deal between Disney and Fox was going to be taking place, and knowing that Fox is already trying to establish itself with the FS1 and FS2 brands, there was probably no way that we're going to keep both, knowing ESPN has their litany of channels in various ways too. So this isn't expected, or unexpected, I should say. It's just I'm a little bit unimpressed with the name itself, if I could offer any reaction.
Me too. Frank?
Like Ed said, the name change is somewhat unimpressive to me. When I think of the name Bally, I think of a casino out in Las Vegas with the same name.
Or Bally Soul Fitness.
Yeah, that too.
Yes.
But I wonder why this? If they're trying to get a sponsorship with a casino, given the fact that sports betting's been legalized in Michigan, why are they going with that name with something that's not even based in the state, with something that's completely out of state, has no connection to the area? That's just one question I have about it, but I think we'll see what it does in due time. I believe, Taylor, you mentioned you don't think it's going to result in any changes of on-air talent or anything like that, but we'll see what happens in terms of quality of broadcast and other small things, so we'll just see how it goes.
Yep, we'll see all right. Now to the Lions. They have mutually agreed with quarterback Matthew Stafford to part ways. Stafford requested a trade, and the Lions decided to pursue it. They've agreed with Matthew Stafford. So we're going to go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, there are several teams that are interested in Stafford, including the Colts and the 49ers. Ed, go ahead.
Yes, those two teams have shot to the top of the list, it seems, in terms of those that may be vying for Mr. Stafford's service. But first and foremost, let's get back to the fact that Matthew Stafford himself came to the realization that the writing was on the wall and it was time to go. Because I guess for years, if you could find one criticism about Matthew Stafford, it would have been in terms of not so much on the field but off the field, it would be his somewhat nature to not be so outwardly vocal with his disappointments or criticisms or whatnot, whether it be towards the team, the franchise, the Ford family, etc. So the fact to hear, I believe it was Kyle Mikey, I could be getting his name wrong, but he mentioned on Twitter that this was brought up even before the coach and GM search even began, that possibly Stafford was open to the idea of a trade. So that lets you know that this has been something that's been brewing in his mind for quite a while. And when you take into consideration the fact that he's had multiple seasons now where he has to deal with consistent injury on top of carrying a bad team, when you add on to the fact that now this team is going to start, they can call it a retool, but let's be honest, it's a rebuild. There's no way in hell Stafford at this point of his career, at his age, was willing to go through yet another rebuild. He's been through far too many at this point. So when you can combine those factors and in the fact that, hey, it may sound insignificant, but who's to say that his wife, in a certain instance, was feeling a little bit pressured in the sense that, hey, maybe we do need a new start for our stress, for our family, in terms of less stress and whatnot, because, you know, the Stafford family has gone through a lot, whether you say that it's fair criticism or unfair criticism, regards to whatever issue or opinion they may have had. They've been through a lot, and I think they might have come to a decision on a whole lot of fronts that it's time for a fresh start. That being said, you know, it goes without saying that there should be a level of appreciation, I feel, in regards to what Matthew brought to this team and to this franchise for his entire duration here. As for myself, I was a unabashed supporter, defender. I guess you could say I was the perennial banner waver and flag carrier of the Matthew Stafford Defense Club. But that's the feeling I've had ever since before he was even drafted, when people were saying, oh, you got to take Aaron Curry. You definitely got to take Aaron Curry. What's Stafford going to do for you? And I would keep trying to tell people in this league, you need a quarterback to have even a decent chance of winning. And I think over the course of these 11, 12 years, Matthew Stafford showed with his talent, with his endurance, his will, his determination, and a lot of other things that he may not get enough credit for. It showed how valuable he was to his teammates, how valuable he was to his franchise, and really how valuable he was to the city. And I think that is something that is those intangibles and everything else that made Stafford unique to this team is something that you can't replace quite as easily, and they're going to have a difficult time to replace no matter who they have as the next starting quarterback. So when you consider everything that Stafford's been through so far and knowing that he may not see himself doing this for far too much longer, you know, he's got a family that he wants to raise. He's already been through enough in regards to dealing with his wife's health problems over the years. It may be to a point where, hey, I don't want to spend what's ever left of my prime in a consistently losing scenario. So I'm just glad that he finally decided that to come to his realization himself. I knew it was probably the hardest, if not the most difficult part of this whole entire process, but it had to be done because both sides need to move on for each other, and it's long past time.
That they do. Frank, the time has come.
Yeah, and it couldn't come soon enough, as Ed alluded to earlier. For all the criticism that Matt Stafford has gotten in his time with the Lions, there's been times where I've been critical of him too. The guy went out there every time and left it all on the field, and I was reminded of that when I saw the video from the game against the Browns in 2009 where he took a hit before the last play of the game. Everyone thought he was going to have to come out, but he came back in, hurt shoulder and all, and ended up throwing a touchdown pass to tie it, and they ended up winning that game that day. And I was just reminded, he didn't win a playoff game here, and that's going to be kind of a red mark on him. But you cannot tell me in any way, shape, or form this guy wasn't a leader. He didn't bring it. He didn't give it his all to try and make the Lions a winning organization. He went out and did his job. It's just that he didn't fail. The organization failed him by not getting the right people in the right places. That said, I do wish Stafford the best of luck wherever he ends up. I do hope he wins a Super Bowl. I do hope that he can finish his career on a high note. And that's really all I can say. And I'll just say one more thing too. I don't think he'll even hear me, but Matt Stafford, your time here in Detroit has been appreciated by me. Thank you. Best of luck.
We'll keep our eyes on Matthew Stafford and see where he's going to go in the near future.
Yeah, because there's a lot of interesting teams. Pardon the interruption, Taylor, but when you consider the Indianapolis Colts, they have a vacancy now that Phillip Rivers is retired. San Francisco, who knows? They may be unhappy with Jimmy Garoppolo's progress. They may want to try something else. Denver, we've seen how the litany of quarterbacks that John Elway has picked over and over again have failed him. It may be, ever since Peyton Manning's retirement. Who knows? He may need another proven commodity there to help him out there. New Orleans is another wild card, I think, in regards to the impending retirement of Drew Brees, but I doubt that's going to happen because, amongst other things, the Saints may not have enough money, and that's regarding the other players on their team that they have to pay. As for Washington, maybe, but I think the two leading teams, if not three, it might be, would be Indy, San Fran, and Denver. That's just my view.
Well, the Washington football team is not a winning team.
Well, here's one thing I would like to throw in, too. What about the Pittsburgh Steelers? I think that Ben Roethlisberger is probably finished playing there. That could be an opportunity. And here's a team I would definitely keep my eyes on. The LA Rams, because I've been hearing reports, not saying that what I've heard is gospel, but they are starting to lose their patience with Jared Goff as well. Plus, if, let's say, they try and go make a trade for Aaron Rodgers, who may or may not want out of Green Bay, and they don't get him or Deshaun Watson, maybe Stafford possibly ends up in L.A. I do know that him and Kelly do have property in California, so take that for what it's worth.
Not to mention, with Brad Holmes, you could see the connection there coming from his former team in the Rams. That's another reason probably why that the Saints got brought up, because what Dan Campbell just came over there from that coaching staff. He's bringing over a couple of his coaches as well. It would make sense. Sean Payton, I think he looks like a guy that could gel well with Stafford, and it's not too far away from Texas. So you could call it as close to a homecoming as you get for Stafford.
Good point. By the way, from Ian Rappaport, Stafford would have stayed if they kept Darrell Bevell. That's one thing I pointed out to you guys. Wow.
Stafford, I can believe that.
Yeah, I can kind of believe that, too, because it seemed like he and Bevell had a good relationship with each other.
They were starting to build a more consistent, stabilizer relationship, something that he hadn't felt with an offensive coordinator in quite a while. I think he did like Jim Bob Cooter, even though they got rid of him. I don't know what his relationship was like with Lombardi, and I wasn't quite aware of how he felt about Linehan, but I do know, right, at least he was favorable with Jim Bob, and it's good to know that he was favorable with Devil before this came up.
Yeah, the loyalty was out there between Stafford and Bevell especially. So, with Stafford out of the way, it's time for the What's Your Grade segment, and we have a lot of men and hirings to grade. So let's get to it. Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade. By the way, the What's Your Grade segment is brought to you by the Viget Sports mobile app. The Viget What's Your Grade segment brought to you by Viget. Referral code STABLES when you sign up. Capital S at the beginning, lowercase letter B in the middle. First off and foremost, the Lions hire an offensive coordinator, former Los Angeles Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn as their offensive coordinator. We'll go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, what is your grade on Anthony Lynn?
This is an A, simply based on the fact that Anthony Lynn was a name I had floated out here on this show weeks ago when it was rumored, well, not rumored, it was reported that he was being fired from the Chargers. I thought, hey, that could be a guy you want to talk about as a possible head coach vacancy. Of course, this is before they made the decision to go with Dan Campbell, but knowing the fact that they still wanted to bring him over anyway shows they value his offensive mindset, particularly with the running game, which is something that Dan Campbell himself will tell you. He's not an X's and O guy in terms of play call, but if there's anything that he does like to do in terms of one side of the ball is to establish the run. So getting a guy like Anthony Lynn who can get guys out in space in motions, knows of how to get the best out of your running backs, and knowing the running back core that we have here, that's one positive to look at, and it's less pressure off of Dan Campbell, because in terms of X and O's play calls, Anthony Lynn is just coming off a season where he was in charge essentially of the X's and O's because he coached the Chargers. So that's one less thing for Dan Campbell to worry about. So for me, A grade on the Anthony Lynn hire.
Yeah. Frank, what's your grade on Lynn?
Make it 2 for 2 for an A grade for Anthony Lynn. I've always thought of him as a really good offensive mind. The knock on him in LA was the fact that his game management was not very good. But now all he has to worry about is being an X's and O's guy and calling plays for the offense. So, and I have to admit, since Dan Campbell's not your X's and O's guy, I'm starting to think that maybe he's trying to surround himself with good people who are well respected. I mean, Lynn, obviously one of those guys. He's delegating responsibilities to them. So it's a move I like very much. And it's also worth noting that Anthony Lynn's offense actually did pretty well with the presumed Rookie of the Year in Justin Herbert at quarterback. And with Mel Kiper's latest mock draft coming out today, has the Lions selecting Justin Fields out of Ohio State. I mean, look, all hate put aside from you, in the event that they...
Honestly, I would actually like this because let's pause for a brief second on the fact that Ohio State quarterbacks have not had a good track record in the NFL. Put that out of your mind for just a second and realize that, hey, in terms of the offensive scheme and type of game plan that Anthony Lynn may want to run, and knowing that a guy like Justin Fields has a different type of quarterback compared to what they had in years past with Stafford, I think you could see Anthony Lynn, let's say if they were fortunate enough to get Justin Fields, you could see Anthony Lynn try to use Justin Fields the way he used Justin Herbert. I can see that as a possibility. Mold the offense around his strengths, his abilities, what he does best, and you go from there. Obviously, you got to get him quality offensive linemen and make sure his running backs stay healthy. But I could see that as a possible formation if they were to get Fields.
Yes, or even any other rookie quarterback, too, who they might draft. I think that what he did with Herbert last year kind of gives me that confidence that, yeah, this is something that could easily work as long as they protect him with a good line and get weapons for him. So this is an A for me.
So we all grade him an A. Next up, the Lions have hired former Cleveland Browns and Kansas City Chiefs general manager John Dorsey as a front office executive. Ed, what is your grade on John Dorsey? And then we'll hand it over to Frank.
Either A or A minus. That's another A grade because, again, this is just to merely help out with Brad Holmes as a personal advisory role. Because this is Brad Holmes' first time gig as the head GM of an NFL organization. So he still is going to need some advisory help from here and there from time to time. So getting a guy like Dorsey, who has the experience that he has, one key pillar that Holmes wants to build his tenure upon. So I got no problem with it. I give it an A, no worse than an A minus.
All right, good grade. Frank?
I'm going to go A minus too because, look, Dorsey's got a track record. He was having a hand in overseeing drafts in Kansas City and Cleveland that brought in guys like Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. Also the draft that brought Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. So he's had a hand in drafting talent to teams. So, and again, this is kind of to help advise Holmes with getting acclimated to the role of running an organization. And I'm sure he'll have some input come draft day as well. So yeah, A minus for me.
And if you notice the theme, even going back to Holmes himself, the key core, one key core value I think this regime wants to target is better drafting. It was Bob Quinn's arguably biggest weakness, his biggest failure while he was here. So I think that's one aspect that the Brad Holmes tenure wants to tackle head on first and foremost right out the gate.
Bingo.
Good point. Yeah. The Lions are only getting started, though, still. They've hired former Los Angeles Rams director of pro personnel
Ray Agnew
as assistant general manager to Brad Holmes. Ed, you'd have to grade this a high grade.
Oh, it's a definite A because it is basically a reunion of sorts. Agnew had worked previously with the Rams under Brad Holmes in a sense. So this would be, again, it'll be another advisory familiarity role. I think that's, if you notice, that what's between what Brad Holmes is doing on his end and what Dan Campbell is starting to do on his end is bringing together a sense of not just experience, but familiarity. I think familiarity is always key. If you're a new regime coming over from a different platform, different program, location, you want to bring together some sense of oh, okay, so that you're not completely like a babe in the lost woods in a sense. So I have no problem with that. I do like the fact that he wants to have experience around him because, again, this is his first go at the rodeo, so to speak. So I like the method and the methodology of how he's approaching it. Absolutely. So A grade.
All right. Frank, you'd have to grade him an A, too.
You guessed absolutely right, Taylor. I give the Agnew hire an A as well. I mean, this is a guy who Holmes is familiar with, having worked with him in L.A. And I think if you're trying to get something going and build something from the ground up, it's good to have people who you've worked with and you trust in order to get things going in the right direction. So A grade for me on Agnew.
All right. So thus far we've graded Anthony Lynn an A, John Dorsey an A-, and Ray Agnew an A. Next up, former Rams cornerbacks coach Aubrey Pleasant as secondary defensive coach and passing game coordinator. Ed, what's your grade on Pleasant?
B+, because I want to see what he can do with this offense. Well, not this offense, with this defense and this roster, specifically this unit. I understand the hire because Dan Campbell worked with him back in New Orleans. And also the fact that when you have guys like Marshawn Lattimore, for instance, that can help you out in the secondary, you can go from where the New Orleans defense, which is like in 2015 or 2016, was ranked as giving up an average passer rating per game of over 100. That dropped significantly over time to the point where they were in the 80s, if not underneath that margin in 2020. And not to mention they had double digits in interceptions and turnovers. So I think in terms of what this team needs, its biggest weakness out of all of the entire team is its secondary. I wholeheartedly agree with that, even more so than the lack of pass rush. Because how many times did this team get burned on third down, giving up big play, giving up gash play, giving up this, giving up that? And I think to bring in a seasoned cornerbacks coach who knows what the hell he's doing, first and foremost, is the first step of trying to turn this weakness into a strength.
Yeah. Frank?
I'm going to give this a B, but I think also it could improve with results. I mean, Pleasant, obviously proven track record being a defensive backs coach and working with some good guys. Obviously, Ed mentioned Marshawn Lattimore in New Orleans. Also worked with Jalen Ramsey in L.A. while with the Rams. Mm-hmm. And a little fun fact, Pleasant is actually native to Michigan. He played his high school football at Montrose. So yep. I'm going to give this one a B, but I really want to see what he can do first. I mean, I want to see if he can kind of take Jeff Okudah under his wing, help him get better, along with the other defensive backs, too, that the Lions have, and see if anyone whom they bring in via free agency, trade, or draft.
If he could make Jeff Okudah his Marcus Lattimore, that would be brilliant.
His Marshawn Lattimore.
Marshawn, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jeff Okudah needs to be developed more. I'm going to give this a B+. I think that's a much need right there, especially with the secondary defense that has been awful over the years. And now they have a new secondary defense coach, Aubrey Pleasant, and passing game coordinator, also on the offensive side of the ball. But Ed, as you pointed out, Jeff Okudah needs a lot of development. Yes, especially
since you took the guy third overall in the damn draft. He needs some type of development. Fair or not, he needs to develop.
Yep, this is the NFL. He needs to develop in the NFL. 2 to go here. The Lions hired former Philadelphia Eagles running backs coach Deuce Staley as running backs coach and assistant head coach. Ed, what's your grade on Staley?
B+ with room to see what the results will look like. I do know that Deuce Staley, in terms of his time working in Philadelphia, I believe he was a former running back with not just the Eagles, but with the Saints as well, at least one of those two teams. So, of course, his experience pays dividends not to his position, but how he does his position well. Working with guys like LaShawn McCoy when he was in Philadelphia, that helps great on your resume as well, considering the fact that McCoy was at his best, you could say, when he was with the Eagles and hasn't been quite the same since. And also knowing that, hey, we still got guys like Kerryon Johnson. We got a stud in DeAndre Swift wanting to develop. And we'll see whether or not we want to bring back Adrian Peterson, who I thought performed well enough for us, or decide to go another route and bring another veteran back. We'll see. But I think those methods and those reasonings help play the factor in Deuce Staley and B. Plus, who knows? Maybe Deuce Staley had some connections, New Orleans connections with Dan Campbell as well. So that's never out of the realm of possibility.
Uh-huh. So your grade was, again?
B or B+. B+ for Deuce Staley.
Okay. All right. Frank, what's your grade on Staley?
I'm giving this hire a B+. I mean, he's been a well-respected running backs coach with the Eagles. I mentioned that he helped develop LaShawn McCoy into one of the top backs in the league in few years ago. And I do know that Staley also had an offer to go to the Chicago Bears, but he chose to go to the Lions. So maybe he liked the fact that says maybe I can work with Kerryon Johnson and DeAndre Swift and help develop them. And as for another veteran back to bring in, I'm not sure Adrian Peterson gets brought back, but I think a name that might bear watching is Mark Ingram, who the Ravens just released, and oddly enough is another Michigan native. Yeah, and New Orleans connection too. So that's something that definitely bears watching, but I'm going to give this one a B+.
Hey, cloning the Patriots didn't work. Might as well clone the Saints.
Partially, not completely. I'll give that a B+ as well. Last one. The Lions have hired former Eagles special teams coordinator Dave Phipp as special teams coordinator. Ed, what's your grade on Phipp?
B-, probably C+, because I want to see what he does compared to what the last guy had here. I think, as you recall, he was fired due to poor performances in games. I think what the last straw that broke the camel's back was either he didn't have the team prepared on a fake punt attempt or something to that effect. But either way, it was a long time to clean house. But we'll see what this tenureship does, because in terms of special teams, it's more than just not turning the ball over on those plays. It's what can you get out of your return game. And quite to be honest, I think Jamal Agnew, as good as he has been, he has been quite put in the right spot to be as effective in the return game as we wanted to be. So we'll see what this special teams coordinator does here. So for now, C+, low B-.
All right, good range. Frank, what's your grade?
I'm going to give Phipp a B-. I mean, when he was in Philly, their special teams actually did fairly well, and he was also the special teams coordinator when they won the Super Bowl, mind you. And I read something that they had, in the last few years, they were first in the NFL, and I believe it was either kickoff return touchdowns or punt return touchdowns. I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I think he's going to be a definite upgrade over Braden Combs. I know that's not saying much, so I'm giving this one a B-.
All right. I'll give it a B- as well, and that is the last one of the Viget What's Your Grade segment, brought to you by the Viget Sports mobile app. Download it on either the Apple App Store or Google Play. Sign up with the referral code STABLES for Stables Media. Capital S at the beginning, lowercase letter B in the middle. Other Lions headlines: former offensive coordinator and interim head coach Darrell Bevell, as you guys mentioned, had joined the Jacksonville Jaguars as offensive coordinator. Former Lions general manager and San Francisco 49ers executive Martin Mayhew will become the general manager of the Washington football team. And finally, former head coach Matt Patricia returns to the New England Patriots to assist their coaching staff in numerous roles, except for defensive coordinator, because he was probably fired by then before he came to Detroit in the first place. So, Ed, we're going to go to you, and then we're going to go to Frank. Ed, any insight on Bevell, Mayhew, and Patricia going elsewhere in the NFL?
I know for a fact that Bevell's probably going to have some fun going to Jacksonville because, A, he's going to see what Urban Meyer has in store for him, what he's got picked in his brain, and 2, he's likely going to be helping develop Trevor Lawrence. So why wouldn't you jump to that opportunity? I don't blame him for doing that. For Mayhew, I believe Washington, they just came off winning the division, correct?
Yes.
Right, so that may be he sees signs of promise there. You may have to get another quarterback because you just got rid of Dwayne Haskins. You don't know how much Alex Smith can hold up. God bless him, by the way, for his comeback story. But you still need more reliable long-term deal of quarterbacks. So that could be something to look forward to when it comes to their time in the draft because, forget about the fact that there's Lawrence and Fields at the top. I'm sure there should be a diamond in the rough in the litany field of quarterbacks in this draft. So look for Martin Mayhew to target that as well. As for Patricia, it doesn't surprise me. It just reminds me of that line that Thanos said in Avengers Endgame. You cannot live with your own failure. And here you are, back to me. So that's all I got to say about the failure that is Matt Patricia.
Yeah, he had no experience as NFL head coach coming to Detroit. That's the key. Frank, your turn.
Well, I'll start off with Bevell. I mean, kind of like Ed said, he's really going to have a lot of fun getting to work with Urban Meyer, kind of learn some stuff from him, plus get to work with potentially Trevor Lawrence and a lot of other young, cheap talent that the Jags have on offense, most notably James Robinson, running back. So we get to work with him. Martin Mayhew getting another GM job. I think I was initially surprised at it, too, given the way that his tenure in Detroit ended. But, maybe he finally got a chance to learn from his mistakes, right some wrongs, and I think he'll be a little bit better season. Obviously, Washington needs to find a quarterback. via either the draft or trade. So we'll see what happens there, because they're probably going to end up ruling the roost in that division, because, let's be honest, the NFC East is god-awful. And as for Matt Patricia, or as I've referred to him constantly, Patrasha, what a surprise that he goes back to working with Bill Belichick in some form, but I don't think he's going to be the defensive coordinator anymore, especially after the last game that he was the defensive coordinator for the Patriots was the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and they absolutely got shredded by Nick Foles.
Andrew Peterson.
Yeah, because of that one game, it's because of Matt Patricia that Tom Brady isn't going for his 8th ring in a couple weeks instead of a 7th.
Good point.
Very true.
All right, so that's Lions. Now we transition to the Red Wings. Yeah, they keep tanking. They got swept in the doubleheader in United Center, 4-1 and 6-2 by the Chicago Blackhawks, and then they lost to the Dallas Stars in overtime, 2-1. Vladislav Nemestikov finally got his first goal of the season. Taro Hirose behind the net. I don't know what he was trying to do, either bank it off somebody or pass it to Nemestikov, but either way, his puck steering direction might have been off course, but it bounced off of a Star skate and right to Nemestikov, and he put one past Khudobin, and the Red Wings were on the board first. But Klingberg tied it up in the second period, and then Jason Dickinson from Klingberg. Dickinson one-timed it top shelf past Thomas Greiss. Stars win in overtime 2-1. Greiss is still winless. Red Wings go at it again against the Dallas Stars Thursday at 8:30 on Fox Sports Detroit Plus. Then they are back home against the Florida Panthers Saturday at 7 on FSD and Sunday at 5 on FSD. Then they welcome in the Tampa Bay Lightning Wednesday and Friday next week at 7. Both are on Fox Sports Detroit. We're going to go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, still the coaching seems to be the problem, but this is the way the Red Wings tank, just like the Pistons, which we'll get to next.
Yeah, I was going to say the coaching has to have some type of culpability in this, because I didn't see, forget about Dallas for a minute. Let's go back to what they did against the Blackhawks, or what they didn't do. They got shellacked in one game, and then it didn't look quite so hot in the other. And I saw, from my view, no apparent adjustments. And knowing that this is a team that you're playing in back-to-back games, you would think something you would have on film or whatever the case, or you would try to implement. And from how they play and how they looked, it looked like they didn't go through any of that. That was far different from what I saw them do at the beginning of the season against Carolina. Far different. It's good to see that Dylan Larkin is the only one, as of late, being productive with the offense. But even as he is the captain, he cannot do it by himself. I want to see more out of Tyler Bertuzzi. I want to see more out of Anthony Mantha. You mentioned Nemestikov finally getting a goal. Good on him. Let's see what else he can do in order to warrant him getting another season with this team next year. But between no adjustments that we saw, in my view, against Chicago, and the overall lack of offense, like they've gotten just one goal, maybe two, and in these past few games in a row, it's embarrassing. And it has to point to the coaching. At some point, it does point to the coaching. Now, I don't know if this means that it could lead to a snowball effect to where Eisman may have no choice but to fire Blashill in the middle of the year, or instead he'll just let it ride it out. He knows this is the last deal of his contract anyway, and if we don't see any drastic improvement that warrants him getting another shot, Stevie will just do the polite thing and say, hey, Jeff, just wasn't working out. Wish you best of luck. We're just going to part ways. And that's all there is to it. And then Steve can go and get the coach that he wants. So I could see that as a scenario happen, because I think this is going to be the first true test for Steve's patience and mettle as a GM for this team. Throw out what he did at Tampa out the window. We're now focusing on what he's going to do here. How is he going to handle potentially firing a coach in the middle of the season and replacing him and starting that coaching search? How he's going to handle that process? Because at some point, it's looking like the writing's on the wall. I mentioned the writing on the wall for Stafford. It's looking like the writing's on the wall that somehow, some way, Jeff Blashill will not be here next year. So how do you get to work on that? That's what we've yet to be seen out of Eisman.
Yeah, and I can imagine, just like Frank Vazner, he can fire Blashill in the middle of the season. If he were to do that, he would up Dan Bilesma to the interim head coach, and then in the offseason, hire the coach that Steve Eisman wants, just like you pointed out, Ed. So
yeah, I mean, I get it. Bilesma, the resume, the name, he won a cup or two with the Pens. I get that, but you don't need to let's say he does get the interim tag, keep that tag on him and go somewhere else, because you don't want to, trust me, by the time it was done in Pittsburgh, he more than wore out his welcome, similar to how Babs did it here. So you don't want that leading your squad.
Yeah, and Babcock only won one Stanley Cup. Bilesma won at least one, maybe two.
One.
Oh, wait, he only just won. Thank you. Yeah, they both won one. All right, so, good points. Frank, you're up next.
I have maintained this, and I still will, that Jeff Blashill cannot be gone soon enough. And I know there's going to be people that say, oh, he has no talent to work with. Scotty Bowman could not coach this team. I disagree.
That was through last season.
Yeah, I mean, last season, there was no talent here. This time around, the roster's been upgraded definitively, and there is still no improvement. And people say, well, they're not good enough. Well, look, the Chicago Blackhawks aren't that good. Mind you, yes, they still have Patrick Kane. But
they were winless going into that doubleheader last weekend.
Exactly,
right.
Taylor.
And we've seen how they've dismantled their roster over the years. That's no excuse. No excuse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
but as for the Red Wings roster, that's for those who haven't been paying attention. Frank, continue.
But also, when you watch the game, I mean, I watched some highlights from Sunday because I was at work.
Do you even follow their roster?
Yeah, but I could clearly see players aren't putting out an effort to compete in games. That falls squarely on coaching, and that's why I fully believe that Yzerman's gonna have to pull the trigger whether he likes it or not. And as for who gets elevated, I know people will say Dan Bilesma. I've said that too, but I'm going to throw this out here about Bilesma. And this was something that was pointed out by Prashanth Iyer on Twitter a few days ago, is that the Red Wings power play, since Dan Bilesma has been an assistant coach, has been utter puke garbage. And I remember the days where I was one of those who complained about how Pat Ferschweiler was bad at running the power play. When in reality, when I looked at some of the numbers, it actually wasn't that terrible. It was about middle of the road, even though it didn't seem like it. And even in the years of John Torchetti running it, still not that good. But since Bilesma takes over, it's just been absolute bottom of the barrel. You'll have to go to Prashanth Iyer's Twitter to look it up to see what he did. That's
or just look at the past 3 games alone. One power play goal in 3 full games, if not more.
It's not that doesn't cut it. So that's why I say you got to get rid of Blashill. I mean, look, if you make Bilesma the interim coach, and okay, but I definitely would not make him full-time head coach, because I think his best coaching days are long, and I mean long gone. And even if you don't decide to promote him, do you possibly make Doug Huda your interim head coach, or do you or even go after Gerard Gallant, who's still available, or do you try and bring Daryl Sutter out of retirement?
Ugh.
Who knows?
Yeah, long gone, in the immortal words of Ernie Harwell. And you can follow Prashanth Iyer on Twitter, by the way, at Iyer_Prashanth. So those are good names to point out, Frank. Thank you very much. Let's go to the Pistons. They won just one game over the past week. But first off, they lost to the Houston Rockets 103-102. Then they lost to the Philadelphia Sixers 114-110. And then they smashed the Philadelphia 76ers 119-104 because the Sixers were playing without Joel Embiid, who was probably injured, either that or just resting or injury management, one of the three. And then just recently tonight, they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse 122-107. Jeremy Grant, 26 points leading in scoring, but in that win over the Sixers 2 nights ago, Dylan Wright that time led in scoring with 28 points. Jeremy Grant with 25. But there were 4 Pistons in double figures. 3 of them, or at least 2, over the 20s, for goodness sake. Ed, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, Pistons keep tanking, and then they're going to hit the road on the West Coast.
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. But in terms of going back to other players performing besides Jeremy Grant, it's good to see, because in terms of Blake Griffin, it's quite troubling, his lack of production as of late. Now, I granted some of that is due to the fact that, once again, his injury problems are flaring up. I believe he had a concussion or had a concussion protocol last week.
His health is declining.
Yeah, he's dealing with knee soreness. That's why he didn't play tonight or whatever the case may be. Again, this was the aspect of Blake Griffin of waiting for the other shoe to drop, or what injury is going to flare up or pop up this year, or what body part. It's amazing. I haven't heard the same thing about Derek Rose yet, as of yet. But don't worry, get that one time. That's coming. So that's one aspect. And as for this West Coast trip, let's see. Who do you have? You have the Lakers, you have the Warriors, you have the Nuggets, and you have the Jazz. Oh, best of luck with those. Best of luck with those games. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, and may I mention Mason Plumlee. He can defend well. He can take charges like the one he took against Andre Drummond a little earlier tonight. But when he has the ball on the attack, he can't pass, shoot, or even rebound the ball. I saw a very poor pass from him intended for Grant. And many times, Mason Plumlee has had so much trouble rebounding the ball on the offensive end of the court especially. And he's been struggling in production as well. Only close to the teens per game. That's just not nearly good enough. This is Mason Plumlee. I thought he was going to be good prior to this season, but the way I've been seeing him play, not as good as I anticipated. Frank?
Well, I will have to admit the performance from DeLon Wright against the Sixers was a nice surprise. Wright. Yeah, DeLon is how it's pronounced.
Oh, DeLon? Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and look, Jeremy Grant we've come to see him be consistent with getting your 25 points a night. But as for Blake Griffin, yeah, father time has caught up with him and his knee injuries. And I think at some point you just got to say, okay, can we move him out to a contending team where he can be a contributing piece? I'm not sure with his contract, but I think it's clear his best days are behind him, which I kind of figured Derek Rose would be the one with the more significant knee problems given his history. So again, it's just another time where the new faces on the roster just got to continue to develop and get better, like your Jeremy Grants, your DeLon Wrights. Mason Plumlee, Taylor, you pointed out how good he is defensively, but offensively, he is a train wreck. So, but again, I'm pretty sure he was only on a 1 or 2 year deal, so I'm sure that they can easily ship him out afterwards if they're not satisfied with him.
Yeah, true. So, Pistons home against the Lakers Thursday at 7 on Fox Sports Detroit. Then they go out west. They play the Golden State Warriors Saturday at 10 on Fox Sports Detroit Plus. Then at the Denver Nuggets Monday at 9 on FSD. At the Utah Jazz Tuesday at 9 on FSD. And then at the Phoenix Suns Friday next week at 9 on Fox Sports Detroit Plus. And then at the Los Angeles Lakers a week from Saturday at 10 on Fox Sports Detroit. Then they're back home for a couple games against the Brooklyn Nets and the Indiana Pacers 2 weeks from now. Tuesday and Thursday, the 9th and the 11th, both at 7 on Fox Sports Detroit. So that's Pistons. Now to college basketball and then the Tigers. First off, the Michigan State Spartans men's basketball team might return to action soon, but that's going to be in another one of our 5 questions. But right now they're scheduled to play at the Rutgers Scarlet Knights Thursday at 7 on FS1. Then they go to Columbus to take on the Ohio State Buckeyes Sunday at 1 on CBS. They're home against the Nebraska Cornhuskers next Wednesday at 7 on the Big Ten Network. And then at the Michigan Wolverines, that was postponed because the Michigan Wolverines men's basketball team has had their activities suspended for 2 weeks, along with other athletic programs such as ice hockey, swimming, and other stuff due to COVID-19 from other athletic programs. So we're going to go to Ed and then Frank on this one. The reason why I say the Michigan State Spartans men's basketball team could return to action soon is because their women's basketball team returned to action just recently. Ed, any insight on that?
Yes, I do know that they are currently scheduled to have their game tomorrow against Rutgers unless something pops up at the last minute. They are looking to resume their schedule from that point on. Again, the date with Michigan has been postponed, so given to how this issue with the with the athletic department and the students, how that conflict will resolve itself, it depends on when that game will be rescheduled, or they'll just lift the postponement if things calm down in terms of the COVID outbreak, so to speak, that's going on in regards to the school. I believe it was mentioned with the new variants that's been popping up of COVID in the state of Michigan, started in the UK, inevitably found its way over to the U.S., and now with it being in the U.S., it's making its way through different states. Now it's popping up in Michigan. There were some cases established, not just Wayne County, but also Washtenaw County, where the University of Michigan is at. So I think the school is taking precautionary measures. That debate is for another time, I feel, about whether or not, should certain students be waiting here? Should they be quarantined there? Should they be separated from other students? That type of thing. Because I think there is some logical reasoning you can say that, this could be a little bit unfair, so to speak, towards, say, for example, the basketball team, because they followed protocol the right way. They've had no issues, no outbreaks of their own. And now seemingly they're being punished for something that's out of their control. I think also it's giving them unfriendly reminders, almost a trigger, if you will, about what happened last year, of how they were starting to hit their groove, or were trying to get a groove, trying to get ready for the tournament, and then boom, everything got canceled. So they're getting a reminder of that. They don't want to go through that type of situation again, hence their reaction and response to what the school has decided. But again, just hoping cool sides can prevail, come to an agreement, a compromise of what to do, and recognize that, hey, listen, we want to get things resumed, but let's do it as safe as we possibly can. That's all we can do.
Yep, and that was all after Michigan clobbered Purdue, the Boilermakers, 70-53 in West Lafayette.
Yeah, it was a great game, great display, great bounce back, continuing bounce back after that loss to Minnesota. Not just the performance against Minnesota, but following it up what they did against Purdue. Isaiah Livers leading by example. Another game of 20 points or more.
22 and 10 boards.
Yeah, and for his efforts, he was named the Big Ten Conference Player of the Week. I think he had over 50% shooting from the field and was shooting 70% or more from three. That's insane. And
wow, well earned.
Yeah, so his contributions were the key, if not the key reasons of the team's success bouncing back from that loss against Minnesota. So definitely will earn his Player of the Week award.
Yep. Also, Eli Brooks back in action with 11 points in that game before that COVID suspension. Frank.
I do want to add, Ed, that Isaiah Livers has made the watch list for the Julius Erving Award, awarded to the top small forward in college basketball.
Oh,
so
my.
That may have been in the wake of his performance in the last week, so just wanted to throw that out there. I mean, as for Michigan's basketball team getting shut down, I mean, yeah, they did follow protocol. They weren't doing anything that they weren't supposed to be doing. But I guess this new COVID variant that originated in the UK, from what I heard, I can't remember if it was somebody from the cross-country team or the swimming team or another team that was over in the UK. I don't know if this person was native to there, visiting family, came back and tested positive. And, of course, they just ended up shutting everything down as a result. I know you don't want this to be spreading all over like wildfire across the campus. I understand that. But when you have a team, when all the teams are doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're wearing the mask, they're social distancing, everything they're supposed to be, I would say, why do you have to punish them for when they do nothing wrong? I mean, look, if this was a case where this person comes home and then there's some on-campus gathering where a bunch of the athletes are there and then find out, tested positive, then yeah, I would fully understand that. But this, I think, who knows what it is. That it's another topic for another time. So I just hope that things can get back to normal and Michigan is able to just keep rolling like they were.
Yep, let's hope so. Now for the Tigers, and we continue our What's Your Grade segment for them. Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade. They've signed veteran pitcher Derek Holland to a minor league deal. Holland last year, a 1-3 record, 6.86 ERA in 12 games last season, 5 starts from what I can remember. Ed, we'll go to you and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what is your grade on Derek Holland?
C-, and I'm being very nice about that. I think this is just for depth purposes mainly. It reminds me of how you put Brad Penny in 2011, 2012. You just put him on that fifth spot role. Hope he wasn't too much of a nuclear embarrassment. It's like it reminds me of a phrase, I guess, Johnny Cochran would use, garbage in, garbage out. Or is this a reversal? Garbage out with Jordan Zimmerman, more garbage in with Derek Holland. But hey, let's see what he brings to the table. But I'm going to be tempered with my expectations. So, again, being nice, C-.
Yep. Frank?
Giving it a D because that's all it is. It's a depth move, minor league deal. no risk involved. I mean, if he ends up pitching well, okay, then yeah, you got a good deal out of it. And if he doesn't, what do you lose? Nothing. So all it is, depth, D.
All right. I'll give it a D plus then. I'll range it. And then one more. They've signed veteran catcher Wilson Ramos to a 1-year, $2 million contract. We'll go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, what is your grade on Wilson Ramos from the New York Mets?
I like Wilson Ramos as a player. I think he could bring some type of venerable experience to the catcher spot, which I think is a position that I think you need that type of value. I think, look at the example of how valuable Yadier Molina had been for years to the Cardinals. So, again, that's the type of experience or versatility that's required behind a spot like that. So I'll go C+. C+ on this with room to see what he brings in terms of results. So C+, room for a low B-.
All right. Frank?
I'm in the same boat as Ed, C+ with chance to improve to a B- with results. I mean, Ramos has been a good catcher. He's an upgrade over what the Tigers would have, but again, that's not saying much given the fact that they have guys like Grayson Greiner and Jake Rogers trotting out there. So, I mean, at least he brings experience there. He's not going to be as productive as he was a few years ago when he was an all-star, but yes, he's an upgrade, so C+ with opportunity to improve to a B- for me.
Yeah, and let me touch on Grayson Greiner for a second, real quickly. Grayson Greiner, just like Jeff Okuda, needs more development in the major leagues, just like Jeff Okuda needs more development in the National Football League. Grayson Greiner has not hit very well, but he can throw runners out, but his hitting needs more development. That is our Viget What's Your Grade segment for the Tigers, brought to you by the Viget Sports mobile app. Sign up with our referral code STABLES, available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Now to our 5 questions segment. Let's answer 5 questions. It's time for 5 questions on the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Question number 1. Who or what should the Lions get in their trade for Matthew Stafford?
Depending on who they trade to, obviously a first-round pick. I don't know if it's going to be a first and a third, first and a second, but at least 1 or 2 first-round picks would be, in my view, draft picks for next year and the year after, a couple players, or at least one or two players with this type of haul. I think it's a reasonable expectation because I think, believe it or not, Stafford's value has not decreased. I think that's due to his own volition, his own play, and how he's handled himself on and off the field. Teams want that in a quarterback, in a leader, in a captain. So I think Stafford, through his own will, even possibly improved his own draft stock, his own trade stock, if that was even possible. So that would be my certain expectations. At least one or a couple of draft picks and a player.
All right. Frank?
I would say at a minimum, it's a first-round draft pick +1, which that could be another second-round pick or a third-rounder. That's the bare minimum. I mean, could you get 3 draft picks and maybe a player or 2 in return? It's very possible. I think it's ultimately going to depend on where Deshaun Watson gets traded to, because I think that Brad Holmes will be calling guys say, oh, you missed out on acquiring Deshaun Watson. Let me offer you, here's my offer on Matt Stafford. So I think that's really going to play a role into it, but I would say at a minimum it should be first-round draft pick plus a second or third.
All right.
And possibly more.
Bonus question.
Not just Deshaun Watson, what he could bring about. Don't forget about Carson Wentz. His name has been floated too. So seeing the type of deal he could potentially procure as compared to Watson, that could be an indicator of what the Lions may want to do with Stafford before they decide to pull the trigger.
Yeah, that was going to be my bonus question. Who should the Lions replace Matthew Stafford as quarterback? Deshaun Watson and Carson Wentz are 2 options. I mean, options are out there.
They are options, and if this were a type of scenario, like, for example, if this was 2K in my GM, yeah, let's put together a 3-team deal, but I don't think it's going to work out that way. Again, the teams that we mentioned, Indy, San Fran, Denver, maybe New Orleans, maybe Washington, maybe the Panthers. Don't rule out the Patriots either. You know, there's a litany of teams that requires Stafford services to where you may not be able to get a swap in return. So if I were to say who is going to be Stafford's replacement, I would lean more towards whoever they decide to take in this upcoming draft, if they have one available to them.
I'll agree with that on that. I'd say it's going to be whoever they take in the draft, because I don't think they're going to end up doing a deal where they acquire Deshaun Watson, because I think he's going to want to go somewhere where he can win. And I highly doubt they acquire Carson Wentz, too, because he's going to want to go somewhere where he can win. They're probably better off just drafting someone and developing them.
Yeah, another good point. Question number 2. How will the Lions' new front office and coaching staff work things out as of right now? We'll go to Ed and then Frank. Ed, go ahead.
Well, like I said, having Anthony Lynn on as your offensive coordinator, it basically puts him back in a role, knowing that he was just a head coach last year. It takes the X's and O's and play calling pressure more off of Dan Campbell, what he wants. That's how he prefers it. Familiarity with his defensive coaches and with how Deuce Staley is looking at as the running backs coach. Quite impressed, I would have to say. You don't want to be too optimistic or happy because we've been down this road before. But in terms of how they're trying to structure this thing, even with the out of nowhere hire of Dan Campbell, I quite approve of how they've handled this so far. So good job on this transition so far.
Oh, yeah. Good job is right. Frank?
Well, I'll echo what Ed just said. It's been a very good job by the front office, surrounding Dan Campbell with experienced coaches at their respective positions. Anthony Lynn, who was a head coach, is now going to help more of the X's and O's side. And even Brad Holmes bringing in guys in the front office who he's worked with and have experience. That's going to help make this transition much easier. It's going to help get this team going back in the right direction. And hopefully, I say hopefully, because we've kind of seen this movie before, not being the laughing stock of the league.
Yeah. Question number 3. How will former Lions staff members Darrell Bevell, Martin Mayhew, and Matt Patricia fare in their newest roles elsewhere in the NFL? Ed?
Well, as mentioned before, Darrell Bevell is going to have an exuberant amount of time crafting and molding Trevor Lawrence with the help of Urban Meyer, of course. So there's one aspect for him to look forward to. In terms of Martin Mayhew, I think there's one reason he picked Washington is because of the state of the division itself. Because let's look at the rest of the NFC East. The Giants are a clown show in more ways than one. The Eagles are an absolute chaos, and right now, with regards to they just fired their coach, they may be getting rid of their quarterback.
Always making ADP mad.
Exactly, and right, can't forget that. And with the Cowboys, there's a sense of calamity right now because, number one, they don't know what the hell they're going to do with Dak Prescott, knowing that, A, he just got his leg destroyed, so you don't know when he's coming back. And on top of that, are they going to decide to pay him, or are they going to let him walk? What are they going to do with Dak? That's the most important factor. And knowing of how Jerry Jones has handled his role as general manager of the team over these past few years, it gives you no confidence.
As well?
Yeah. Owner as well, yes, but he's also been in charge of the team, the GM role. That's how hands-on he's been. And we've seen the results of what it's done to the Cowboys. So, again, I know as a Cowboys fan how you would expect to win the division this year, but hey, I guess in that one sense, Cowboys fans and Michigan fans can be just alike. I can admit to that. Like, oh, this is going to be the year. We're going to do well. We're going to do it. And then we fall flat on our faces. So I can admit to that. So Martin Mayhew's looking at all that and say, hey, I got the best spot here. This is a team that really we need a quarterback and a couple players. We got a hell of a coach, Ron Rivera, who's a story in and of himself. So, hey, I am in the best spot possible with this team. And for Patricia, just stay low and stay quiet. That's all I can say. Because just the fact that may have to see him again is making me ill. So just stay low and stay quiet and keep as low profile as possible.
Yeah, and relearn the ropes, more importantly. Frank?
Well, I think we said this earlier that Bevell's probably going to be the most successful in Jacksonville, working with Urban Meyer and also helping develop Trevor Lawrence and also working with all the cheap offensive talent that they have down there. He'll have the most success. Martin Mayhew, I think, like Ed said, just went to Washington because the NFC East, or as I refer to it, the NFC least is just a crap show. The Eagles have fired their coach and they're probably going to get rid of Carson Wentz. The Giants are a joke with Dave Gettleman calling the shots, and the Cowboys are, well, the Cowboys. You know what you're going to get with Jerry Jones running the show, and it's not anything that's going to be good anytime soon, and plus Dak Prescott coming off of a horrible leg injury. So it's pretty much I don't see anyone else other than Washington winning that division unless something crazy happens. And of course, Matt Patricia, just stay out of sight. hopefully he can be started off sharpening the pencils that he likes to put in his ear in Bill Belichick's office. Just do that. Don't be on the field.
Yeah. Question number 4. Will the Michigan State Spartans men's basketball team resume playing soon, considering the school's women's basketball team resumed their action? Ed, we'll go to you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed?
Well, again, to mention what we talked about earlier, they are currently scheduled to resume play tomorrow against Rutgers. The other games scheduled currently as well. The only game that's currently not scheduled as of now in the next couple of weeks is the February 6th clash against Michigan. So until that gets resolved, everything else looks good until, again, as of now, because these things are always to be determined. Card subject to change applies perfectly here.
All right. Frank, you'd say the same.
I do. I know they are scheduled to play Rutgers tomorrow night, but it is worth noting that they did have 3 more positive tests for COVID-19. That would be Gabe Brown, walk-on Davis Smith, and also assistant coach Dane Fife. The game is still on as of right now, but we'll see where it goes tomorrow morning and into tomorrow afternoon. If anything new pops up, again, like Ed said, the line, subject to change, is going to be playing a big role here, even with these newly rescheduled games as well. So just kind of see where it goes.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. Finally, question 5. Are the Tigers going to continue to build their roster prior to spring training? Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, go ahead.
We'll see. I think they're going to try implementing moves as possible. Again, I like the Wilson Ramos deal. Derek Holland is just a body, and I think they're going to see what they can do to help improve their outfield, because that's their biggest eyesore to me right now in terms of what their units, if you want to go by units, their outfield is the biggest eyesore to me. So I can see them trying to look into that before we get to spring training.
Yeah. Frank?
I want to see if they do improve their outfield, like Ed said, because it's going to need a lot of work to be done. I'm not really sure who's all available via free agency. I do know there's been some moves going down and a couple of trades as well. I've gotten notifications on my phone about. So we'll see what happens before spring training, but I'm sure that something's going to happen.
All right. And that is our 5-question segment, and that is our episode. Before we go, we want to remind everyone to download the all-new social sports mobile app, VigIt. Enter the referral code STABLES for Stables Media, capital S and the letter B, lowercase in the middle, when you sign up. Available on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download the VigIt app and sign up with the referral code STABLES, with a capital S at the beginning and the lowercase letter B in the middle. Michigan users can pre-register with its partner BetMGM and make a minimum deposit of $10 in exchange for 2,000 Vig coins. Take advantage of this opportunity, Michiganders. Also get prepared for the all-new show Hustle and Grind with Joe Madden, Lisa Diaz, and Cam Parsons, coming to and premiering next Monday, February 1st at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and 6 Pacific. Coming to and premiering on Stables Media, February 1st. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. That concludes another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. We'll be back next week. Fred Smith and Frank Vasner. This is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vasner on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Frank_Vasner, VAJCNER. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a high, and we rest our case. Stay safe. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast does not represent or defame any of the teams it covers, nor does it represent or compete against any mainstream media in the state of Michigan. It is also not for entertainment or debating purposes. It only detects, exposes, and reveals honest, actual, and hidden truth, facts, and statistics about them. And it is for every sports fan's own good, because the truth is out there.